So profile-wise, I would now introduce myself as a student, MBA student at IIM Ahmedabad for their 1 year full-time MBA program for the 2025-26 batch. Before that, I was working with Eli Lilly and Company. It's a pharmaceutical firm, and I was working with their internal consulting team. So the role was a mix of consulting and strategy, and more specifically speaking, omni-channel strategy. But that's a question for another day. Before that, I've worked briefly with the Boston Consulting Group, uh, another major consulting firm. And then again, there also I worked with the healthcare team, healthcare knowledge team. And I started my career back in 2019, ZS Associates. So these are the three firms I worked with. And there in ZS Associates, I work with the customer-centric marketing team, which again is an extension of the omnichannel team, which is something I've done over the years through ZS to LILD. I've done my bachelor's from VIT Vellore, 2015 to 2019, and completed it in computer science and engineering. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. By the time I join the program, I will have 5.5 years of, give or take, 5.5 years of experience. So I would consider myself as a lucky one since Bangalore was at the last. So I got around 15, 20 days of preparation. And then again, I used to contact random people who used to post their experiences online and get a flavor of what the topics at least are for experience, for the extempore, and what was their experience like. So it was almost the same panel that was traveling throughout city. So you could have a sense of familiarity as to understand what can be your experience on the DJ. So coming to my preparation, uh, so after submitting my essay, I quickly understood that I don't know anything about the extempore. And for me, on a very personal level, Ahmedabad was more of a first choice. I wanted to convert it at any cost. So that's when I reached out to Preppie. Uh, I connected to one of the mentors at Preppie, and he gave me a very good framework. So basically, he told me to use ChatGPT as extensively as you can. He gave me a framework like give tell ChatGPT that this is I'm Ahmedabad's Extempore PGPX and give all the details. Ask ChatGPT to suggest you 100 of topics and practice them on a day-to-day basis. He told me to practice 4 topics on a daily basis. I just stuck to two, to be very fair. But then again, it was so he introduced me to the extempore part of it. So what extempore actually was and how grueling it can be actually. If you actually look at the process, it's very stressful because the flavor of it is you don't know. You don't know what the topic is, and there's an element that you only can choose the topic. They only also don't know. So there were a bowl of chits at the interview table, and you choose. So basically, you're choosing your own destiny in that sense. So obviously, you don't have any control over what the topic is, what you can actually think about, or anything. So it's basically how quickly you can think on your feet on that day and in front of people who are ready to grill you in every direction possible. So that's something you need to be prepared for. But then again, coming to the preparation part, so I took those topics and let us say there's a random topic. How can AI be beneficial to the humanity? So the flavor of examples, you have to take one side, either for or against the topic, and you have to speak at length for that topic for at least 2 to 3 minutes. And that is when afterwards, that is when the questioning of the panel starts. So, what preparation methodology I was suggested was to put down both the for and against. Okay, choose whichever you feel most comfortable with. But then again, after you have completed your 2 to 3 minute practice of extempore and everything. Sit down, think of counter questions you can think for your stance and take the other stance and think of counter questions. So basically, if I'm speaking in for like AI would be very beneficial, think of 10 counter questions which I can think of and start answering those questions in my own head. So basically, I'm preparing for questions which I feel can be asked. Obviously, you can also use ChatGPT at this time and understand what can be the counter questions for this. And if you have done your for part, you then move to the against part, against the topic, and then repeat the process. So basically, you're stealing yourself to both the for and against. and actually understanding how the interview panel can go about your interview. Obviously, you cannot predict the topic, and the topics are very varied. So it comes from world politics, economics, geography, regardless. And I have heard of people who do not know anything about the topic. So that's something you need to be prepared for. That is something no one can prepare you for. But that is, I think, the most stressful part of the entire application. So, like I mentioned in the beginning itself, Extempore can make or break your application entirely. So, the first recommendation would be to prepare as much as possible. Think of topics which you don't think about, and start reading up on current knowledge pieces for the last 3 months, for the past 3 months, at least, in the least, if you have time. 15-20 days, I cannot expect much from anyone. Means I myself did not prepare as much, so I cannot recommend anyone for the same. But then again, prepare as much as you can, read up as much as you can, use ChatGPT extensively, and the most important part, prepare both for and against the topic. So that is how you are able to understand what is the policy in your stance and what would be the strengthening part in your support. Means the against part if you're speaking against for the topic. And that is how you understand how the panel would be able to attack you from every direction. They will attack you from every direction, and they want to see you get nervous during the exam. If you are able to hold yourself during the interview, I think that is the most important part during the exam. Your uh, points which you put out should be very relevant to the interview. And a brownie point would be if you can plug in recent news topics from or past news topics from the past. So, or from the past or from the present, whatever would be beneficial. If you can plug in genuine data points, genuine data points, or something everyone can verify on the internet, that would be very beneficial for your exam code preparation. So there are two options to this. Uh, there's an urban legend that I would say. So basically, if you don't know anything about the world, so let us say if you ask me about astrophysics, for example, I obviously do not know anything about the topic. So there's an option for you to change the topic. You can go for another set, which would be provided to you, but that's there for only one topic. You cannot do it afterwards. And as an urban legend, it is usually said that don't go for the second one because it's very difficult. Like the questioning becomes more difficult. So that's the urban legend that you can think of. But then again, coming back to the topic where you are saying that the candidate does not know anything. So the topics would be written in such a sense that everyone will have a topic or an idea about the topic. So they're not going to ask you about Russia's internal politics, which obviously no India can think about or knows about. They would be talking about things specific to India or specific to things which are very relevant in today's topic, like AI or let us say energy consumption, climate change, something like this. Obviously, they would want an opinion, but they would not go as much astray of the topic to completely confuse you during the interview. So obviously, you will have some knowledge about the same. Yes, you can't get into the nuances. Like let us say, if anyone does not know about anything about politics, but they have something to speak about, let us say. So start gathering your thoughts in a very approach manner, and obviously, with the data you have, with the knowledge you have, you can speak up for at least 2 minutes. That I'm pretty sure of, because the topic won't be that oblique also. You have to be very receptive, and that's why I'm saying read up on news for the last 3 months. That should cover most of the topics that they are going to ask. So that is how you actually approach it. Start approaching the topic with the mindset that you're going to, you know about the topic basically. Start putting your thoughts in a very, I would say, concise manner. Even if you know very specific things, like just a one liner of the topic, just write it down. Start speaking about the project, speaking about the topic, and once you start speaking about, you will understand that there are other data points that I can join to this topic that I'm talking about. So it's all about how you control yourself during the extempore. That is one of the most important things, to be very fair. Topic is very secondary, but how you behave in the extempore in terms of how confident you are or how confidently you can councils, the admission panels cross questioning. That is how you take care of the extempore. And obviously, there have been people in my batch itself who were complaining that we don't know anything about the topic. We didn't know. But how we approach it, that made all the difference during the interview, and not the topic's knowledge or our data point that we could add to the topic. So how you approach is more important. Brownie points for you if you know anything more about the topic, and even bigger brownie points if you can plug in relevant data points and knowledge cases in terms of that. Yes, because extempore is something everyone is very scared of. Like anyone who's applying to the PGPX, the PGPX program knows that extempore is the crucial point for their interview. The interview in comparison to extempore is very chill as compared to what you look at when you look at the extempore part. But then again, I think that's the idea of them for to get you nervous in a topic which you don't know about and then make you speak about it. But Ahmedabad actually follow the case study method, and they are designed for you to to not know anything. Obviously, they will cater to people with certain backgrounds, finance or humanities or something. But then again, in general, people will not know anything about the case. And that's how you build on the discussions and how you bring the class together. That's what counts. So the portion was very straightforward. Like I mentioned, my preparation was revolving around three pillars: why MBA, why am I am Ahmedabad, and why MBA from I am Ahmedabad at this point in time. So they need to understand that you have achieved something in life and you want IIM Ahmedabad as a launchpad for your greater ambition. There has to be an understanding that you are not applying to Ahmedabad just because it's IIM Ahmedabad. There has to be a certain purpose why you're applying to it. And they want to see the drive also in your application. So maybe you have achieved a lot many things. Do you need an MBA also? That also is a very fair question for the employer. Because if you're just applying for the tag, you might not be happy. So if you're not happy with the course, you might not speak very well about it. So that does not make a very happy alumni. So if you do not have a purpose defined before you come to Ahmedabad, maybe that's not the kind of applicants they are looking at. So they want to understand why you want to apply for an MBA. And there are many great business schools in India. I'm Ahmedabad, I'm Bangalore, Calcutta, ISB. Everyone is performing at the best they could. So why do you want to go specifically to I'm Ahmedabad? You cannot say oblique reasons or give movie references that I watched this movie, I fell in love, I cannot, I want to go to Ahmedabad. You have to give very strong reasons why. So one of my answers for why Ahmedabad was a case study method, which is very specific to Ahmedabad, which I mentioned previously also. So that was one of my one of the portions that I used in my answer. Then they also need to understand why are you doing an MBA right now? You can maybe defer your MBA by 2 years. So why right now? What is the urgency for you to do an MBA right now? Why not 2 years later? So those kind of questions they will be asking, but in a very circular manner. So they'll try to understand what have you done in your work experience. What is basically the work that you did, and how is it different from the thousands of other applicants that we are getting? So why are you the special one who should be selected in a program and not anyone else? So they're very particular about you being very clear with your purpose and the reason why I am Ahmedabad. You need to understand that and be very convincing in your answer also. Maybe your thought process is that I am Ahmedabad is the place to go. But if you are not able to I would say, tell to the panel or convince the panel that maybe IIM Ahmedabad is the place for me to go. Maybe they won't be as convinced as they can't read your thoughts. You have to vocalize your thoughts in a very efficient manner. Also. So that's the process. The questions revolve usually around your work experience, your career progression, and why MBA and why IIM. So these are the four pillars, but I specifically prepared in those three pillars framework and understood that there was a set pattern why I wanted to do how I wanted to answer my question and how I answered them in my real interview were closely related. Like it was a mirror image of how I prepared and what the questions were asked. So let us say you have mentioned that I led a project of 13 engineers or 14, whatever the count is. So obviously they cannot validate during the interview. They they have no such authority or any such means to actually validate. But then again, it should be very believable. And if you're leading a project, you should be knowing every nuance of it. So they can ask you what was the time period when you joined, what was the efficiency factor KPI which you actually introduced. Because obviously, regardless of IIM Ahmedabad, every corporate expects its employees to improve efficiency and get in newer things so that the project can be sold to a much larger audience. So obviously, efficiency KPIs and what was the business outcome that was achieved. So if you say I led a team of 500 engineers and the project was $500 million, so obviously that's blowing it out of proportions. Obviously, if you are doing a work, you are working at that level, you probably do not want to come to IIM Ahmedabad. 500 engineers, $500 million under your belt, it's crazy for someone like 5 years of experience. So you have to keep it very real. You have to understand what is also, first of all, your truth can only be defined by you at the interview. If you really say 500 engineers, you only can validate it, not us. But then again, you also have to understand that is my truth actually like bri- in continuation with my workforce experience. If at my level, I say I'm leading a team of 100 engineers, again, it's a very blown out of proportion kind of a statement. If I make this statement after 15 years of experience, maybe that's a, statement that I can live with. So you have to understand what your truth is, what your work experience actually needs to be, and how you want it to reflect on your application as well. So, if let us say, coming back to the point, if you're leading a project or you're supervising two other people, they can ask for KPI, they can ask for the business outcome, they can ask for the business statement. So, let us say a project was started, but what was the need for it? What was the after and before reaction of the leadership you were working with or the people you were working with? And what was the KPI improvements that you actually did? Because if you're not delivering any KPI improvement, so obviously there's no progression. You did not create any difference by being a project leader. If there's no difference, why were you even chosen? So there has to be some progression in terms of your project leadership as well. And the depth usually goes to understanding what you have done and what is the knowledge on it. So let us say I come from a healthcare background. And if I say I do not know who my competitors are, like I worked in Eli Lilly, I don't know who the competitors are. So basically, I am very isolated from the outer world. I'm not gaining knowledge on who our competitors are. Why are we actually doing the sales and marketing efforts for Eli Lilly? What are the so Eli Lilly recently launched a drug in India, which is a like a hot. It's like selling like hotcakes in the US and other geographies. So if I don't know who the geography, where the geographies are, means where we operate, what are the clients we work with, who are our main competitors. So basically, I'm just doing my job, clocking in, clocking out, not knowing anything about it, and just going about my day. So is that the kind of applicants do they really want to admit? Do they really want to admit people who are not aware of their own work? So if I said I do not know about Novartis, about Novo Nordisk, these are competitors of Eli Lilly, they would have been very skeptical because they, even if your extempore went well, they are looking at a person who is not aware of his own work or his or her work. So how can you expect the person to be a great student during the classroom itself? Business is not isolated in any sense. It's interconnected by every sense of the word. So if you're not aware of one aspect, how can they trust you to be aware of the other aspects of the project or anything? So it goes on very deep in terms of technical understanding, business understanding, project leadership, KPI improvements, efficiency improvements. But then again, it is very restricted to your SOPs as well. How much you mention in your SOP. So if you don't mention any leadership uh, position in your SOP or resume, they might not ask about it. They ask questions what you have mentioned in your SOP. So basically, you're giving them a framework. This is me in four boxes. Ask me whatever you can in these four boxes. And that is how they ask you the questions. So it's very important, whatever you write in your SOP or resume, that you are conversant with every word of what you write. because they believe that you're telling the truth in those four boxes. If you can't defend yourself in those four boxes, so it's very difficult to go on to the next stage for the selection procedure. So most of your interviews would be held at high-end hotels. So those are the preferred interview locations for all the IIM. So you reach the designated location, and you are made to sit in a common area. So when we reached, we were all sitting in a common area, and there was uh, in the morning. We reached very early in the morning. I think because of the fear or something. But once we were sitting there, after half an hour, someone from IIM Ahmedabad, the admissions team, they come up to the waiting area and usher us into waiting rooms basically. So those are designated rooms where people in groups of 10, 15 are made to sit, and they call in people from that room to make them sit in another waiting area. So that's basically a procedure to not overcrowd the waiting area and actually keep a steady amount of people in both the places. And also dependent on the people who arrive at what time. So let us say my interview was scheduled at, let us say, 9 a.m. I would arrive at 8 a.m. So obviously there would be mismatch in terms of coordination and everything. So that's their way of handling the logistics. The attire that I chose was business formals with tie and formal shoes. It's generally recommended for everyone. Any interview you're going to um, attend, sorry. And the general color that is recommended is black, dark gray, or dark blue. So nothing fancy, nothing orange, nothing green. I haven't seen anyone do that. The general atmosphere was like you knew that everyone is tense. Everyone does not know. Anyone does not know what's going to happen, and everyone wants to talk to the person who's coming out of the panel. But then again, the admissions team quickly ushers them out of the hotel. So basically, you do not have a chance to actually ask what's going on, what are they asking. So we had a very fun game at the in the waiting area. We were clocking how much time the interview went on for. So obviously, there's no correlation. To be very fair, there's no correlation. And if the person who went for the interview got a chocolate or not, that's something. There's a IIMA tradition. I'm not sure. I did not get a chocolate. I was very disappointed. I was very happy with my interview, but I did not get a chocolate. So again, there's no correlation for that. I would have been happier if they gave me a chocolate. Not that the chocolate mattered, but it was a confirmation that it went well. But there's no correlation as such. The person before me who got selected, got a chocolate. So there's no correlation. But yeah, the entire atmosphere is very like everyone is fearful. Everyone is trying to smile, but then again, there's a inherent fear of what's going to be asked. My interview panel, to be very fair, was very sweet. Like the interview started off on a very good note, and they were taking in everything I was saying during the extempore and the interview. They were understanding each and every point, and even if they did not, they were asking clarifying questions. So it showed that they were very intrigued in my application, and they actually were looking at people as a whole and not that them in the moment. So they had read my SOP, they had read my resume, they had a very good understanding of who I was, but they were having me there to understand who I was as a person and someone who's outside of the box, and the four boxes I was mentioned. So interview panel again, it's means people's perception would be different. Like my sweetness would be someone's rudeness. You can't actually judge that. But then again, my interview panel was very sweet in that sense. They were very appreciative of whatever answers they're saying. They had the question, but then again, that was definitely answer. And yeah, uh, means I did not have a chance to interact with anyone else, so I cannot give insights from their interview panel or anything. But yeah, it's very, you can see the fear in everyone's eyes. There's nothing to coax up about it. Everyone knows that everyone is here to grab that one seat that everyone is aspiring for. So there's a sense of competitiveness also. But then again, the interview in general was very well managed and very chill throughout. So no complaints on that. And no, like I was very happy with the interview itself. Extempore thankfully went well for me as well. Extempore was where they asked a lot of questions. Interview, like I mentioned, they already had my SOP, so they were just trying to understand what I was trying to do and trying to go in a deep, a layer deep into what I had written on my resume or SOP. But no googlies, no out of the box moments in the entire interview, I would say. It was very within the resume and SOP area of what I mentioned. Session. So when you enter the room, you are assured to directly pick your check. So that's where an extempo starts. Usually it goes on for 20 minutes. Like I mentioned, 2 to 3 minutes for you to speak, but then again, how you defend and the cross questioning is what takes the majority of the time. So I think it went on for 20 to 25 minutes for me. And the rest remaining time, I think I was in there for 45 minutes. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, 20 to 25 minutes for the interview. So that's how they actually conduct the entire thing. But it's end to end. So once you enter, and by the time you leave, your extempore and interview both would be conducted. To be very fair, it's difficult to say. Like how badly you mess up your extempore is also an extent. But then again, extempore generally sets the mood for your interview. So basically, if you grade extempore, you generally have a softer interview. Like in terms of they're not going to like call you out for every point you have put. They're going to talk to you. So if you have a very bad extemporary, or probably there has been points about you know people not agreeing to that extent, or so basically it's also important for you to be flexible in your opinion, not too flexible. Like the professor says that no, you are wrong, so you don't directly agree to the professor. You put your points. If you feel that you do not have any points going forward, or you cannot defend your stance anymore, then you get flexible and understand that yes, maybe what you are saying is right, and this is something, this is a perspective I had not thought about. So that is how you be flexible. If you are inflexible, if you are arguing with the professors, obviously in real life itself, you won't be happy to talk to a person like that. You would be thinking about ways how to avoid that conversation. So that is how the mood of the interview said by the extempore. If you have a very good extempore, even if you don't have a very good extempore, but you have a very good approach and behavior in terms of the extempore, your interview becomes generally better as compared to the kind of rash questioning or probably pointing out every point would be expected by anyone. So it's not specific to any panel, it's just a general human conversation behavior. If you have a very good extempore or conduct yourself very well in the extempore, regardless of your points, how well you do, your interview usually gets a little better. But then again, there's no quantitative data or anything to back this up. You just rely on your human instinct and drive the conversation forward. I was given the opportunity, to be very fair. I was given the opportunity, but I did not had any leading questions that I wanted to ask. In retrospect, I might say that it's not necessary. Like if you feel making asking question to the panel would differentiate you from others, it's not necessary. So maybe your impression of how you what you put on the panel is what makes you stand out. But then again, if you have burning questions which you feel you cannot find on the internet, and those are legible questions. You cannot ask in the interview and say, what are your placements like? Obviously, first of all, that's something that's available on the internet. And if you entirely make your interview about the placement, so obviously the why I am Ahmedabad does not stand out. Obviously, the placements are excellent. But then again, that is not something you talk about in the first meeting itself with the professor. And this is something that's available on the internet. So why did not you do a research? So those kind of questions can come up. But then again, I did not ask any leading questions. I was very satisfied with my interview. So I did not feel the need to do it. There's no need to do it as such. There's no interview rule for it. But then again, if you have any burning questions, feel free to ask. but don't make it a measure that if I ask a question, I'll be better than the other candidate because they might be making their mark in the extempore part. So on the get-go, I would wholeheartedly recommend Preppie. To be very fair, when I approached Preppie, I did not know anything about extempore. To be very fair, the only reason I approached Preppie was the extempore part. What I got during my session with the mentor from Preppy was absolute and the brutal truth. Means why it has to be perfect, the extempo, how rigorously it needs to be prepared. And to be very fair, I absolutely used overused, I would say, overused the framework that the mentor had provided. And he had given me a framework on how to go about topics. So the only reliant way for me to go about topics was a GMAT club post or any person who had posted an interview experience online, and those were very scarce. Like you cannot find them in a very collated location. But then again, the way the mentor helped me use or leverage ChatGPT for the preparation and understand to both prepare for both the for and against of the topic and understand how to go about how to conduct yourself during the exam. What is something I would say has been a game changer in that sense. And like I mentioned, interview is important. Extempore is more important. So the extempore part, I think, set the tone for my interview, which was a little easier as compared to the extempore. So the extempore help, which I got from Preppy, was which I would recommend it to anyone. And I would understand that how to approach the interview. Like if I have to judge myself from before extempore and after extempore, I understand why the extempore is necessary. Extempore how to prepare for it, and I think in between the journey, Preppy has been very helpful in that. So yeah, I would recommend Preppy, and the actual help that I got was due for the extempore how to approach the extempore, how to deal with the extempore, how to conduct yourself, and what topics to prepare for, and general ideas about the interview as well. So, what questions can be asked? I understood the framework that can be asked about myself during the interview, but then again, to get to that framework, I needed some mentorship. So that was also provided to me by the mentor from Turkey. So yeah, wholeheartedly recommend it.